Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've read this story before, but I've never really analyzed it with you all. Now for those of you that have not read or heard this story, the title is 1 Year in Hell. And it is a true story of a gentleman's experience during the Bosnian War, where they were blockaded for over a year. There's a lot in this story that we can take away from and learn in order to better prepare for whatever may come. So enjoy. And at the end of the reading, I'm going to go ahead and share with you everything that I got out of this story. And if you saw that I missed anything, please leave it in the comments, because that's what we're here for, ladies and gentlemen, so that we can learn from history, so that we can be better prepared for whatever our futures may bring. 1 year in hell. I am from Bosnia. You know, between 1992 and 1995, it was hell. For 1 year, I lived and survived in a city with 6,000 people, without water, electricity, gasoline, medical help, civil defense, distribution service, any kind of traditional service, or centralized rule. Our city was blockaded by the army, and for 1 year, life in the city turned into total crap. We had no army, no police. We only had armed groups. Those armed protected their homes and families. When it all started, some of us were better prepared, but most of the neighbors' families had enough food only for a few days. Some had pistols, a few had AK-47s or shotguns. After a month or two, gangs started operating, destroying everything. Hospitals, for example, turned into slaughterhouses. There was no more police. About 80% of the hospital staff were gone. I got lucky. My family at the time was fairly large. 15 people in a large house, 6 pistols, 3 AKs. And we survived, most of us at least. The Americans dropped MREs every 10 days to help blockade cities. This was never enough. Some, very few, had gardens. It took 3 months for the first rumors to spread of men dying from hunger and cold. We removed all the doors, the window frames from abandoned homes, ripped up the floors, and burnt the furniture for heat. Many died from disease, especially from the water. 2 from my own family. We drank mostly rainwater, ate pigeons, and even rats. Money soon became worthless. We returned to an exchange. For a tin can of Spam, you could have a woman. It is hard to speak of it, but it is true. Most of the women who sold themselves were desperate mothers. Arms, ammunition, candles, lighters, antibiotics, gasoline, batteries, and food. We fought for these things like animals. In these situations, it all changes. Men become monsters. It was disgusting. Strength was in numbers. A man living alone, getting killed and robbed would be just a matter of time, even if he was armed. Today, me and my family are all well prepared. I am well armed. I have experience. It does not matter what will happen. An earthquake, a war, tsunami, aliens, economic collapse, uprising. The important part is that something will happen. Here is my experience. You can make it your own. Don't stay apart from your family. Prepare together. Choose reliable friends. 1. How to move safely in a city. The city was divided into communities along streets. Our street, 15 of 20 homes, had patrols, 5 armed men every week, to watch for gangs and for our enemies. All the exchanges occurred in the street. About 5 kilometers away was an entire street of trading, all well organized, but going there was too dangerous because of the snipers. You could also get robbed by bandits. I only went there twice, when I needed something really rare, like medicine and mainly antibiotics. Nobody used automobiles in the city. The streets were blocked by wreckage and by abandoned cars. Gasoline was very expensive. If one needed to go somewhere, that was done at night. Never travel alone or in groups that were too big. Always 2 or 3 men, all armed. Travel swift, in the shadows, cross streets through ruins, not along open streets. There were many gangs, 10 to 15 men strong, some as large as 50 men. But there were also many normal men, like you and me, fathers and grandfathers, who killed and robbed. There were no good and bad men. Most were in the middle and ready for the worst. 2. What about wood? Your home is surrounded by woods. Why did you burn doors and furniture? There were not that many woods around in the city. It was very beautiful restaurants, cinemas, schools, even an airport. Every tree in the city park was cut down for fuel in the first 2 months. Without electricity for cooking and heat, we burned anything that burned. Furniture, doors, flooring. That wood burns swiftly. We had no suburbs or suburban farms. The enemy was in the suburbs. We were surrounded. Even in the city, you never knew who was the enemy at any given point. 3. What knowledge was useful to you in that period? To imagine the situation a bit better, you should know it was particularly a return to the Stone Age. For example, I had a container of cooking gas, but I did not use it for heat. That would be too expensive. I attached a nozzle to it that I made myself and used it to fill lighters. Lighters were precious. If a man brought me an empty lighter, I would fill it and he would give me a tin of food or a candle. I was a paramedic. In these conditions, my knowledge was my wealth. Be curious and skilled. In these conditions, the ability to fix things is more valuable than gold. Items and supplies will inevitably run out, but your skills will keep you fed. I wish to say this: learn to fix things, shoes or people. My neighbor, for example, knew how to make kerosene for lamps. He never went hungry. 4. If you had 3 months to prepare now, what would you do? 3 months? Run away from the country. Today, I know everything can collapse really fast. I have a stockpile of food, hygiene items, batteries, enough to last me 6 months. I live in a very secure flat and own a home with a shelter in a village 5 kilometers away. Another 6 months supply there too. That's a small village. Most people there are well prepared. The war had taught them. I have 4 weapons and 2,000 rounds for each. I have a garden and have learned gardening. Also, I have a good instinct. You know, when people around you keep telling you it'll all be fine, but I know it will all collapse. I have strength to do what I need to protect my family. Because when it all collapses, you must be ready to do bad things to keep your children alive and protect your family. Surviving on your own is practically impossible. That's what I think. Even if you're armed and ready, if you're alone, you'll die. I have seen that happen many times. Families and groups, well prepared, with skills and knowledge in various fields, that's much better. 5. What should you stockpile? That depends. If you plan to live by theft, all you need is weapons and ammo. Lots of ammo. If not, more food, hygiene items, batteries, accumulators, little trading items, knives, lighters, flints, soap. Also, alcohol of a type that keeps well. The cheapest whiskey is a good trading item. Many people died from insufficient hygiene. You'll need simple items in great amounts. For example, garbage bags, lots of them, and toilet paper, non-reusable dishes and cups. You'll need lots of them. I know that because we didn't have any at all. As for me, a supply of hygiene items is perhaps more important than food. You can shoot a pigeon. You can find a plant to eat. You can't find or shoot any disinfectant. Disinfectant, detergents, bleach, soap, gloves, masks, first aid skills, washing wounds and burns, Perhaps you will find a doctor and will not be able to pay him. Learn to use antibiotics. It's good to have a stockpile of them. You should choose the simplest weapons. I carry a Glock 45. I like it, but it's a rare gun here, so I have 2 TT pistols as well. Everyone has them, and ammo is common. I don't like Kalashnikovs, but again, same story. Everyone has them, so do I. You must own small, unnoticeable items. For example, a generator is good, but 1,000 Bic lighters are better. A generator will attract attention if there's any trouble, but 1,000 Bic lighters are compact, cheap, and can always be traded. We usually collected rainwater in 4 large barrels and then boiled it. There was a small river, but the water in it became very dirty very fast. It's also important to have containers for water, barrels, and buckets. 6. Were gold and silver useful? Yes. I personally traded all the gold in the house for ammunition. Sometimes we got our hands on money, dollars and Deutschmarks. We bought some things, but this was rare and prices were astronomical. For example, a can of beans cost $30 to $40. The local money quickly became worthless. Everything we needed we traded through barter. 7. Was salt expensive? Yes, but coffee and cigarettes were even more expensive. I had lots of alcohol and traded it without problems. Alcohol consumption grew over 10 times as compared to peacetime. Perhaps today it's more useful to keep a stock of cigarettes, lighters, and batteries. They take up less space. At this time I was not a survivalist. We had no time to prepare. Several days before the S hit the fan, the politicians kept repeating over the TV that everything was going according to plan. There's no reason to be concerned. When the sky fell on our heads, we took what we could. 8. Was it difficult to purchase firearms? What did you trade for arms and ammunition? After the war, we had guns in every house. The police confiscated lots of guns at the beginning of the war, but most of them we hid. Now I have one legal gun that I have a license for. Under the law, that's called a temporary collection. If there is unrest, the government will seize all registered guns. Never forget that. You know, there are many people who have one legal gun, but also illegal guns if that one gets seized. If you have good trade goods, you might be able to get a gun in a tough situation. But remember, the most difficult time is the first days, and perhaps you won't have enough time to find a weapon to protect your family. To be disarmed in a time of chaos and panic is a bad idea. In my case, there was a man who needed a car battery for his radio. He had shotguns. I traded the accumulator for both of them. Sometimes I traded ammunition for food, and a few weeks later traded food for ammunition. Never did trade happen at home, and never in great amounts. Few people knew how much and what I kept at home. The most important thing is to keep as many things as possible in terms of space and money. Eventually, you'll understand what is more valuable. Correction, I will always value weapons and ammunitions the most. Second, maybe gas masks and filters. 9. What about security? Our defenses were very primitive. Again, we weren't ready, and we used what we could. The windows were shattered, and the roofs in a horrible state after being bombed. The windows were blocked, some with sandbags, other with rocks. I blocked the fence gate with wreckage and garbage, and used a ladder to get across the wall. When I came home, I asked someone inside to pass over the ladder. We had a fellow on our street that completely barricaded himself in his house. He broke a hole in the wall, creating a passage for himself into the ruins of the neighbor's house, a sort of secret entrance. Maybe this would seem strange, but the most protected houses were looted and destroyed first. In my area of the city, There were beautiful houses with walls, dogs, alarms, and barred windows. People attacked them first. Some held out, others didn't. It all depended on how many hands and guns they had inside. I think defense is very important, but it must be carried out unobtrusively. If you are in a city and SHTF comes, you need a simple, non-flashy place with lots of guns and ammo. How much ammo? As much as possible. Make your house as unattractive as you can. Right now, I own a steel door, but that's just against the first wave of chaos. After that passes, I will leave the city to rejoin a large group of people, my friends and family. There were some situations during the war. There's no need for details, but we always had superior firepower and a brick wall on our side. We also constantly kept someone watching the streets. Quality organization is paramount in case of gang attacks. Shooting was constantly heard in the city. Our perimeter was defended primitively. All the exits were barricaded and had little firing slits. Inside, we had at least 5 family members ready for battle at any time, and 1 man in the street, hidden in a shelter. We stayed at home through the day to avoid sniper fire. At first, the weak perish, then the rest fight. During the day, the streets were particularly empty due to sniper fire. Defenses were oriented toward short-range combat alone. Many died if they went out to gather information, for example. It's important to remember we had no information, no radio, no TV, only rumors and nothing else. There was no organized army. Every man fought. We had no choice. Everybody was armed, ready to defend themselves. You should not wear quality items in the city. Someone will murder you and take them. Don't even carry a pretty long arm. It will attract attention. Let me tell you something. If SHTF starts tomorrow, I'll be humble. I'll look like everyone else, desperate, fearful. Maybe I'll even shout and cry a little bit. Pretty clothing is excluded altogether. I will not go out in my new tactical outfit to shout, "I have come, you're doomed, bad guys." No, I'll stay inside, well armed and well prepared, waiting and evaluating my possibilities with my best friend or my brother. Super defenses, super guns are misleading. If people think they should steal your things, that you're profitable, they will. It's only a question of time and the amount of guns on hand. 10. How was the situation with toilets? We used shovels and a patch of earth near the house. Does it seem dirty? It was. We washed with rainwater or in the river, but most of the time the latter was too dangerous. We had no toilet paper, and if we had any, I would have traded it away. It was a dirty business. Let me give you a piece of advice. You need guns and ammo first. Second, everything else. Literally everything. All depends on the space and money you have. If you forget something, there will always be someone to trade for it. But if you forget weapons and ammo, there will be no access to trading for you. I don't think big families are extra mouths. Big families means both more guns and strength. And from there, everyone prepares on his own. 11. How did people treat the sick and the injured? Most injuries were from gunfire. Without a specialist and without equipment, if an injured man found a doctor somewhere, he had about a 30% chance of survival. It ain't the movies. People died. Many died from infections of superficial wounds. I had antibiotics for 3 to 4 uses. For the family, of course. People died foolishly quite often. Simple diarrhea will kill you in a few days without medicine, with limited amounts of water. There were many skin diseases and food poisonings. Nothing to it. Many used local plants and pure alcohol, enough for the short term, but useless in the long term. Hygiene is very important, as well as having as much medicine as possible, especially antibiotics. Pretty incredible story, isn't it? Pretty incredible that his family survived it for the most part. I think he said in there something like he lost 2 family members out of the 15 or so that were living in the house. Now, I got a lot of points to cover on this story, but I'm going to go through them pretty quick because I know that this video is already going on pretty long. The first one is, he mentioned that right before it all fell apart, the authorities kept telling everyone everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right. Don't worry. We have it under control. But it wasn't, ladies and gentlemen. I've stated this in the past, that we will be the last ones to know. And even though they lived in an area that was not very populated, only one of about 6,000 people, ladies and gentlemen, that's still 6,000 people, of which most were probably not very prepared, as he stated here that most people ran out of food after 2 to 3 days. He also stated that they had no information, that the only information that they had was rumors, and that the only way to get information was too dangerous because it meant that they would have to go out and search for that information. What does that tell me? That it is a great idea to have a ham radio, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you're not licensed for a ham radio, you can at least listen in on what's going on. What do governments do whenever there's a major crisis? They try to seize your boomsticks. Why? Because that's how they stay in control. They seize your boomsticks, and then the only ones that are left with boomsticks are the actual criminals that you need to defend yourselves against. So as he states here, he has what's called a legal boomstick and an illegal one, meaning that in his country, the government registers all of the boomsticks. That's what makes them legal. And what happens during a major crisis like this? They confiscate the boomsticks. So what he's doing now is he has a legal one that he carries with him and has available to him at all times. And then he has ones that are hidden away that are not registered. Now, I'm not telling you what to do, just what the story said. But I would say that during an SHTF of this magnitude that this gentleman and his family went through, probably a good idea to have some self-defense. He said that shortly after the collapse, the police and all general services like hospitals, supermarkets, things like that were all gone. And one of the troubling things that he said, ladies and gentlemen, is that when people ran out of things, they became monsters. Why? Because it's human nature, ladies and gentlemen, is fight or flight. You're either going to fight to try to survive, or you're just going to go ahead and deal with the consequences and fade away. So it is a very good idea to be stocked up and to have self-defense. Just as he spoke about here so many times, have everything that you need for a long period of time. He mentioned 6 months, which was a great point. You know, to have enough for at least 6 months. I'm always talking about a year, but I've always said that even if you only have a few months supply, that you can stretch it out. Because even during a crisis, there's going to be other people that have things that you may need and things that you can acquire through nature, you know, through foraging, hunting, things like that. So even if you have a 6 month supply, that's a lot better than what most people will have, and you usually can stretch that out. And gangs will start to develop. Usually a month or 2 after the collapse, if you've survived it, that was just your getting ready to begin the battle. Because the first month or 2, people are just trying to survive. People are trying to still keep their humanity. But once they lose hope that help is coming, the battles begin. One of the biggest causes of death, not having potable water. How important is it to have a good water filter and even a good source of water if you're near one? Being mentally strong is another very important factor, because here he mentions that at first the weak will perish, and it will leave those that are strong enough to fight to try to survive. He mentioned that he saw many lone wolves, many people that were trying to make it on their own, that were even armed, that would not make it, because in numbers there is strength. Also, only travel at night and in small groups. That way you don't get sniped. It may sound like far-fetched, right? Me talking to you about being sniped, especially with the standard of living in which we live today. But ladies and gentlemen, if everything falls apart, number one, the government's not going to tell you. Right? They're not going to tell you that it's falling apart. I mean, look around. You know, I can just pick something very simple. Look at our financial system. Do you really think that we have a stable financial system? Our financial system is falling apart. But everything you ever hear in the media is, oh, we have the strongest economy ever. We have the lowest unemployment rate ever. Our economy is doing great. The stock market is doing great. Do you really believe that? And let's get into a little bit of barter. He said that the best way to allocate the things that you needed was not with money, but was with barter. With bartering things that you had extra of that someone else needed, even bartering gold. He even stated that gold was barterable during that time. And he also stated that if you have skills, that your skills will keep you fed. So remember, I've talked about in the past, for you to find your kung fu, right? For you to find that one thing that you really enjoy to do, that you do well, and grow on that. That way, if you ever have to trade your skills for something that you need, you can have something that you're really good at. And usually there's other people out there that will need that skill that you have or want it and have what you need from them. Also, only trade when it is completely necessary. Never trade in your home. And whenever you do trade, make sure that it is in small quantities in order not to alert those that you're trading with that you have a lot of stuff. That way it doesn't make you a target. Another thing he mentioned is that he would rather have 1,000 lighters, and that gold was useful, but not as useful as ammunition. And the most favorable barter items that he spoke about, ladies and gentlemen, were lighters, cigarettes, alcohol, batteries. And those are all things that we can get that don't take up a lot of room. He said that you should have sandbags put away. That way you can fortify your windows. And the last one, ladies and gentlemen, have a good stock of antibiotics. Now, if you go over to Full Spectrum Survival, they actually provide you with a site that you can go to where you can legally get a stock of antibiotics that you can keep just in case. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it. I hope that you got something out of this. I definitely did. Every single time that I read this story, I get something new out of it. So I hope that you did as well. Please share this with anyone you know. That way they can at least acknowledge that this is something that happened. And if it already happened, it means it can happen as well. Maybe it'll kick them out of that normalcy bias that they have as far as nothing bad ever happening. Having said that, thank you very much for joining in. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.